and as more individuals pop in, they can. Sorry, as my cat is roaming in the video. My name is Jacqueline Marsh. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions here at Kline. Just some housekeeping notes. We will be using the Q&A feature to collect questions, to answer questions. So any questions that you have at any point during the webinar, feel free to pop them into the Q&A. We'll both answer them, via chat and answer them live as well. And if we don't get to your question right away, we will definitely try to, hold some questions until the very end. And then I will pass along to my colleagues to introduce themselves as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ina Halili. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions here at Kline. Happy to connect with you all in the chat or even after today, and excited for you to hear from our community members and also our students as well. So I'll pass it over to Dean Boardley.
Hi, thanks so much, Jacqueline and Ina. I'm Danielle Boardley, and I serve as the Assistant Dean for Diversity, Inclusion, and Student Life here at Drexel University Kline School of Law. Just a little bit about me. I've been at the institution at Drexel for nearing 20 years now, and the bulk of my time has been at the law school. I think 16 or 17 years at the law school. I've kind of traveled a bit in those adventures. I used to work with our admissions teams directly in the office, but now I work alongside them as the Assistant Dean for Diversity, Inclusion, and Student Life. And I wanted to share a little bit about some of our programming before I hand it off to our wonderful students, Diksha and Sandra, who will kind of do a deep dive on the connection of belonging. And feel free to engage with us in the Q&A related to the discussion today, any questions you might have related to our programming, our initiatives, or what Diksha and Sandra have, the impact that everything has had for them personally through our program. So as I move forward through the presentation, I just wanted to share with you Dive In. So Dive In is our diversity and inclusion initiative that started about 7 years ago when our dean was appointed dean, and then he appointed a diversity and inclusion committee. I was one of 4 at the time, me and 3 of my colleagues, who were really trying to figure out how we could connect with the community on a deeper level and have a good sense of everyone's sense of belonging. So not only our students, but our faculty, our staff, because it should be an inclusive experience. All of us should feel like we belong in whatever spaces we're in. So our objective, and as you can see, our committee now consists of deans, faculty, staff, students, and our alums who were a part of the committee when they were students. And it's to increase our community dialogue so that we might be better prepared individually and as a community to address diversity and inclusion related concerns. So after the first year, when there were just 4 of us, we continued to grow. And now this year we have 22 members of the Dive In committee. And that's amazing and challenging too, because we want to make sure that everyone is being heard, and everyone is. And we have very robust conversations about what we can do better within our communities, within our spaces, within our conversations with community members. And it's actually hard to get people to kind of move forward from the committee because everyone enjoys it so much that they don't want to not be a part of the committee. So I think that's a good problem to have. And our mission is to foster a culture where all community members feel supported and diversity, equity, and inclusion are ingrained in everything we do. We're committed to creating opportunities for open dialogue, and we'll talk more about that shortly, positive conversations and collaboration between community members at every level. So within the committee specifically, I mentioned that there are different individuals and stakeholders, and the purpose of that is to make sure that all of those insights are coming into the conversation, but the impact is felt throughout the community because we take what we learn from each other and our community members, and we try to make sure we create response to those concerns and to those issues within our separate offices, so that our individuals from our career office who are a part of the committee. They're able to establish connection and make sure that students are feeling like they are being seen and belong within that space. Our individuals from faculty are having conversations about what they can do better in the classroom. Our individuals through administration, how can we make sure that everyone is having a sense of connection throughout the space entirely? So our desired impact is to establish a sense of belonging for everyone. And we know that empathetic leadership is key. So all of us need to be able to have a sense of connection and understanding, even if we don't agree, because as you know, you're preparing to be legal professionals and you have your argument for all things and what it is that your point of view and your perspective. So it's not necessarily to make sure that we all agree, but that we are all heard and understood. And also that a top-down approach isn't enough. Our dean of the law school, this is something that is very important to him, and he is very involved in these conversations, but it can't just be because he said so. It has to be a complete involvement. So that's top down, bottom up, and middle out. We all have something to say and some portion of responsibility for a sense of belonging, connection within the community. And then, of course, inclusion is ongoing. We don't just reach a point of, inclusive perfection because we've learned all of the things and said all of the things and done all of the things, because there's still learning, there's still growth, there's still room to stretch. So we know that we have to make sure that we're practicing and keeping the dialogue open moving forward. I wanted to share some other activities that have happened over the years that kind of continue to branch off into new and exciting initiatives. We learned from a climate survey within our community that in overwhelming numbers, second to having a more diverse and inclusive student and faculty body, that our community members wanted more diversity programming that was supported by the law school. So we are very much connected to presenting quality programming, and that has been our focus over the years. And we call them dive-in days. We hold community-led and student co-sponsored events once a month. And in these photos here, you'll see on the upper left, community mixer that was held in our courtyard right outside the law building. The second photo is a diversity and inclusion discussion about lens, and that's kind of how the anti-racism conversations, which we'll talk about with Deeksha and Sandra, that's how those were sparked. So we used to get together and we just talked about from our lens, we would have questions brought forward and our community members would just discuss like how they see things going on in the world. And then this final photo is just diversity and inclusion in higher education. And that's our dean to the right, and in the middle was our previous provost, and to the left is Kim Mutchinson, and she used to be, I believe, the co-dean at Rutgers Law School. I think she's still a faculty member there. And they just came together to share with us their different perspectives throughout the institutions that they represented and how that impact of a focus on diversity and inclusion within higher education was important. So I just wanted to kind of share with you some of the things that we've done over time and how it's brought us to where we are now. And as I mentioned, our anti-racism conversations, we call them ARC. It's an initiative around group discussion and collaboration. And this was sparked in 2021 from an alum who at the time was the SBA president, who came to me and she wanted to start conversations that really kind of, in a sense, trained our community, but also brought in more intentional and deliberate discussion about what was going on within the world. And from there, it's grown, it's consistent, it's powerful, and it allows each individual within the space, and actually I see Deeksha there in the picture, I'm sorry, I just noticed that. It allows us all to come together and again, speak from our own lens about what's happening, and the topics that we discuss kind of are intersectional and focused on different topics, but it allows us to be seen, for us to get a sense of belonging. So our community members are engrossed in these very informal conversations that may kind of lead into the classroom conversations, that may lead into friend group conversations, that may lead into around the table at Thanksgiving conversations, and allows each of us to understand and have a different perspective because of the different individuals that we've engaged with throughout this process. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I'd love to now open it up to Deeksha and Sandra to kind of discuss a little bit further, do a deeper dive into their experience and how it's impacted them personally and what they've seen from it within the community. I'll start with Deeksha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deeksha Walia. I'm the current SBA president. It's been 2 years of doing this position, and it's been a privilege. I'm a 3L, so I graduate in May. Law school at Kline has been one of the best experiences for me. I feel like our community is so small that we're so tight knit, which has made it so much easier to feel belonging and feel like I belong in this community and I have a voice in this community. Coming in as a minority student who didn't really know anyone, who was coming from Maryland, so I had a completely different state, no idea who the people were, and I came in and I just felt like everyone was so open to becoming friends and becoming a bond in our community. That kind of led me to wanting to be involved and be a voice for our community and start joining our Student Bar Association, which is just basically our SBA, but it's the student government. So whatever you guys call your student government, SGA or whatever it is, it's just the same equivalent in law school, but it's called SBA, the Student Bar Association. And then I somehow became president in my 2L year, and I've loved it since then. And I'm here now graduating. After law school, I plan to, I had going to Morgan Lewis, which is a firm in the city, and starting my career there and taking the bar soon. So that's also a thing that we have to worry about. But it'll be good. It'll be fine. Kline has really trained us well to be able to succeed on the bar exam, and we have so many resources available to us to do well, so I'm not as worried. And I'll let Sandra introduce herself.
Okay, so first of all, I just want to make sure that my mic is working and that you guys can hear me. Okay, perfect. So just like Deeksha, I also joined the Student Bar Association my 2L year. I am currently the Vice President of Finance, and it really has been a privilege to grow and learn within this Drexel community, the Drexel client community. Because of this large space of belonging, it really allows a space for us to fully come to terms with our identity and be proud of our identity. So I am Egyptian and I'm so Coptic, so minority. And during my first year of law school, me and a few other students on campus, we got ourselves together and we founded the Middle Eastern and Law Student Association Club on campus. And if it weren't for everybody that was so supportive of our org, nobody would have showed up to our orgs. And so because we have such a loving and caring community here, we were really able to see that Middle Eastern identity in the legal profession grow. And historically, the Middle Eastern identity has not been seen. We don't even have a statistic for how many Middle Eastern lawyers there are in the United States. And so through these dive-in events, we were able to host events talking about the importance of like the census and the Middle Eastern identity, and how if you're Middle Eastern, you have to label yourself as white, and how that can be harmful, and how just the fact that we have a place to even hold these conversations is so heartwarming for me as like a Middle Eastern woman, where we haven't been able to even talk about this thing, and to be able to share my struggles and share my life and the things that I take home with me with everybody else in my law school, with all of my friends who attend these ARC sessions, has been nothing short of like heartwarming. And post law school, thanks to like everybody at like the career strategies office, I've been able to pursue and look forward to pursuing a career in the fashion industry. And last year I was able to work with Jimmy Choo, Versace, and Michael Kors, which was an incredible experience. And I wouldn't have been able to have that experience and address the identity issues that I had being a Middle Eastern woman from a low income household, working with the lawyers of major corporate brands, fashion brands. And so by dive in and by Drexel Kline providing this sense of belonging, I've been able to pursue my passions both as a Middle Eastern woman and as just a student, first generation law student figuring out their way. So yeah.
I think we have a question, but does someone, I think you guys can only join by Q&A, but I'll let the admissions people correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, in webinar format, we have it set up so that you just view the hosts of the webinar. So you're welcome to throw any questions that you have in the Q&A And we will answer them either, we'll answer them live or we'll answer them via the Q&A.
So I just want to start talking about our ARC sessions, which are our anti-racism conversation sessions that we have every semester. We try to do at least 5 a semester. This year, I think we're doing 6 a semester. It started off with Catherine, my predecessor, who was the president of the Bar Association before me, and I took over once she graduated. And the conversation originally started with just dive in and ARC and the SBA coming up with topics to talk about. We kind of changed that format a little bit my last year, so my first year as SBA president, and we made it more about including our student orgs. And I want to like plug our student orgs. Our student orgs are very, very, very important in our law school. Our administration makes sure our student voices are heard and that we have events and that we're doing things that we feel inclusive and we feel included in some sort of way, especially our affinity groups. Like, for example, Sandra just mentioned the MELSA student org. We also have the Asian Pacific student org, the PALSA. We also have Black Law Student Association, BALSA, LALSA with Latin American, and it list goes on and on and on. So those are our very, very popular student orgs, and really people like, it's not just for people that are identified personally as those identities, but also just anyone can join. I mean, I know I've been to a lot of the MELSA events and I'm not Middle Eastern. I've been to a lot of the BALSA events and I don't identify as Black. So it is just open to everyone to be able to join and have a good experience and just become part of our community. So besides that plug of our student orgs basically partner with us for our ARC sessions to host an event, which we do with Dive In with myself as SBA or the SBA members, as well as our student orgs. And the student orgs have a requirement to attend so that we're getting attendance, we're getting the conversations. So we let the student orgs pick their topic, pick the readings or the podcast. They're very short. It's not long. I know law students are busy, so we try to keep it as short as possible. But it's an hour about during lunchtime. It's built into your schedule already, and our administration does a very good job of having those times built in that you guys can attend these kind of events instead of missing classes. So we try to have those conversations about open conversations of what's going on in our community, especially this year with all the Palestinian and crisis and the Middle Eastern crisis that's occurring. We had a lot of conversations about that. Things like that, of like current events that are happening that we're trying to make sure people's voices are heard in a respectful and open manner. And I'll let Sandra add if whatever she wants to add to that.
Yeah, so we've been working alongside like Dean Boardley and everybody whenever it comes to these like diverse events or sensitive topic events, just to make sure that everybody's voices are heard and included from both sides. And so whenever we have an event, we always make sure that like Dean Boardley is looped in. And because we have so many orgs too, we also do a lot of like networking events among the orgs, right? So we'll have um our dive in ARC sessions will sometimes be combined with BALSA, the Black Law Student Association, and will also be combined with the Outlaw, our LGBTQ plus student association. And that way we address we talk about intersectionality within these different communities, about what it's like to be Black and what it's like to be in the LGBTQ community and how those identities intersect. We also had another one similar to that with the Middle Eastern Law Student Association, what it's like to be part of both communities at the same time, and making sure that all of our layers of identity are seen and heard. And because we create this safe space, we allow for this informal conversations to happen. And these informal conversations are really where we see these big changes happen. Because if you're worried about tiptoeing, you're not going to be able to hear the other side of things, and you're not going to be able to genuinely learn if you're so worried about being like canceled, right? And so by creating these safe spaces, we allow for people's opinions to be heard. We allow for growth through these informal conversations, and we create a space for people to be themselves and hear perspectives from other students that are also dealing with similar or completely different struggles within their communities.
We try to keep our student org list as updated as possible online, but we have new orgs coming in usually every year, and we have students that every year want to start new organizations, and we're happy to have them. So they might not be on immediately, but we do have a couple that are not on the list. For example, the new ones from this year are Solid. What is the full name of Solid? Sandra, do you remember?
It's like the Students Against Substance Abuse, and providing a space for students who are working towards their goals of sobriety within the legal community.
Yeah, so we have a couple of orgs that are not listed, but most of our orgs are on our website. And if you guys want to start orgs, we're happy to have new orgs. But it's a very simple process of going through the SBA and getting an org started, and you get funding from us to make sure that your org can host events and expand as the years go on. So we're happy to have new orgs start every year.
So I wanted to, I know that those of you who are joining us might have some thoughts and ideas about what we've shared so far. So we want to just open up the opportunity for you to ask us any questions you might have as it relates to our programming or our initiatives, or concerns you might have going into law school and having a sense of belonging connection. So is there anyone who has a question they'd like to ask myself or Diksha or Sandra? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly, and I think it might be Janos or Hanos. And I guess if we don't have mics, then we wouldn't be able to hear what you have to say, unfortunately. But maybe if you don't mind typing that into the chat, we'll be able to respond.
So we have a question in the chat about, can you elaborate on the connection between Student Bar Association and student orgs? Are most students usually involved in the SBA? So no, basically the Student Bar Association is the overarching association, and the student orgs basically receive their funding through the Student Bar Association. And we hold elections every year to have 1Ls be 1L reps for the SBA, and 2Ls and 3Ls. And we all, there's basically 6 reps for each class that we have. But not a lot of people are involved in the SBA. Most people are just involved in the student orgs, but the e-board for each org basically communicates with the Student Bar Association to receive funding, to receive support, to receive help to plan their events and how that goes forward.
Thanks for that. Also, it looks like Janos wrote some questions. And please, if you want to spell your name out phonetically for me, I will be sure to say it correctly. That is very important. That is a sense of belonging, connection matters, and making sure people say your name correctly. So I want to make sure I'm doing that. But one question, two-part question. One is regarding state residency. And just to clarify for everyone on the call, we're a private institution, so state residency is not a concern, if you will. The tuition is the same whether you are in state or out of state. But the second, Yana, thank you. The second part of the question, or second question rather, is how does the law school curriculum and pedagogical approach reflect in its DEI mission? That's a fantastic question. So none of us on the call are faculty. However, there are discussions regularly with faculty, both with myself. So I attend the faculty meetings, which take place once a month, and I bring forward different topics that relates to classroom experience, student experience, and the impact of the conversation within the classroom space. So as you can quite understand and know, the laws and the conversations that happen in the classroom space can get a little tricky, sticky, if you will, because of its impact, whether it's socioeconomic or it's race related, or enter whatever your thoughts are here. And our faculty, most of them do a really good job at being thoughtful and inclusive about the approach that is taken. But one thing we've done too in the past is there aren't always opportunities for faculty to do a deep dive into some of these issues as they're trying to do an approach on making sure you understand the law and the theory and all of that behind the discussion. So we've asked faculty to bring those conversations to a community discussion, and we call those dive-in case discussion series. And what that is basically, say there's a case that is in contract as it relates to, and this is one specific conversation that we did bring forward in a case discussion series. It's related to, there was some impact on how a woman was treated related to a contract that she signed for some things that she purchased by, what is the term? Layaway, and the implications that it had. And we kind of went into, okay, was she taken advantage of because of her race and things of that nature? So we were able to have a more in-depth conversation, not just with the students, but for someone like me who isn't necessarily sitting in the classroom, who just wants to hear more about that, what's taking place, for our admissions partners and others within the law school who might be interested in learning or hearing about, what these topics are and the impact it has on the law and how the impact, is in the classroom space. So that's one way we're able to address some of these things. And then our faculty are meeting most regularly about curriculum and structure and things of that nature with the lens of DEI at the forefront. I've attended their retreats. I'm newsy. I want to make sure they're doing what they say and that the discussions that we had. So I try to make sure that I have an ear in these conversations, and it is happening. Those discussions are taking place so that they can be more intentional in their efforts in the classroom space. And then the final question here is, how are these goals supported with policies and investments? But if you can clarify the question about the goals supported with policies and investments, that's the question that I would like to clarify so that we can get you an answer.
Also, just to quickly add onto curriculums. So we have a lot of professors that feed into that use multi-identities and talk about intersectionality as part of their course. And a lot of it is conversations that cannot be had unless you have that intersectionality lens looking into it or considering the different identities. And so for our reproductive rights class that I had with Professor David Cohen, right? He's identifying as a white cisgendered male, correct? And you would think when you first get into this class, like, why is this white guy teaching us about reproductive rights, right? And so David Cohen is he's a great professor, first of all. And every class that we have, he always makes sure that we talk about the intersectional lens of what it's like, of the experience, the lived experience of Black women, of minority women, and other women of color when it comes with dealing reproductive rights. And same thing with his sex, gender, and the law class, that it's not coming from the perspective of what it's like living in America as a white woman only, but also talking about the intersectional lens when it comes to these types of things. He also used to work alongside Kimberly Crenshaw, which is a really cool thing to say. And also he was recently cited in a Supreme Court case. So I always like to plug him whenever we can. And also same thing with our professor, Wendy Green, who teaches a grooming hair discrimination class, right? And Professor Green is the person who started the Crown Act. And if you haven't heard what the Crown Act is, it stands for Creating a Respectful and Open Workplace for Natural Hair. And it's about, she helped create statutes preventing discrimination against Black women who decide to have their hairstyles in protective hairstyles, whether it's like locks or Bantu knots or dreads and things of that nature. And so we have professors that are not only teaching about like diversity and intersectional lens and making sure that it's part of the curriculum and the whole class, but also professors that are out in the real world, making sure that the rest of the country understands the importance of anti-discrimination laws and the extent that anti-discrimination can show itself, whether it's through hair and not just through like race-based, if that makes sense.
Our professors, I think that goes right to the question that we have in the chat, Sandra, of explaining our experiences of belonging and inclusivity in our classes. Our professors, one, are leading scholars in their fields. They are doing work hands-on and figuring out and updating their goals as they're going. But for example, I mean, our 1L classes are very much like our regular classes that every 1L has to take towards contracts. So there's less of being able to take classes that are focused on DEI. However, our professors are very open to discussing their backgrounds, discussing their identities, and bringing those identities out as we're reading cases, as we're discussing why the Supreme Court is doing certain things, what the fact behind those like, for example, in crim law, our professor is very open to talking about how Supreme Court justices have a bias towards police officers and how that goes. And we're doing a lot of that conversations day to day while we're trying to understand the cases and the policy behind those cases. So these things are very open and appreciated. And those conversations happen every day in our classrooms. I've never felt like me being a minority student that I didn't have a say, that I couldn't talk about where my lens is coming from and how I feel about the case, or why this case doesn't is racist, why it's not going, and the Supreme Court justice and the justices aren't perfect, and that's okay, and that's our opinion, and we're allowed to share it, and that happens all the time in our classes.
That's great. All right. Thank you, Giannis, for helping me with the pronunciation of your name. And then there's clarity on the question, and I'll ask Disha and Sandra to chime in. How do you feel that DEI goals at Kline are supported by student investments, policies, and enrichment? Or is there anything that you feel like the school is doing to invest in you as students as relates to our DEI lens?
So for example, we are very much embedding our DEI goals in our day-to-day lives. Our students are very involved, and I've seen, like, over even my 3 years, our diversity in our law school in terms of our classes has increased every year, and we're trying to make sure that every year our admissions office is bringing in diverse individuals. That doesn't have to be just race. It has to be like social and economic status, any diversity that we can have. That means that we can try to promote those voices in our law school, and that involvement has increased as well. So our students want to be heard and want to have those conversations, and joining student orgs and having those conversations within themselves, but also coming to ARC sessions and having the conversations with a bigger, larger community. So we're trying to make sure that our DEI is embedded into our day-to-day lives. And for example, if there is an issue, if I do feel like, for example, a professor pronounces my name wrong and doesn't take the time to learn it, we've gone to Dean Bordley and said, hey, Dean Bordley, can we work on trying to make sure our professors pronounce our names correctly? And that change happened immediately. The next day, it was the professor asking us how we pronounce our names and how she can fix that, or whoever it was. So it very much is a day-to-day. If something's happening, we're allowed to speak up and be like, can we fix it? And if it's not gonna be perfect, our professors are learning as we're learning, as the world is growing. So there's problems that occur, but those problems get addressed. And I think that's really what our community is really good on, is addressing problems as they're happening, as well as trying to make sure our DEI identities are being expressed day to day and being discussed and openly in our law school building.
I was literally just about to piggyback right off of that. Not only is it important that you're being heard, right? But what's important is that people are listening. People are acting, right? And that is one of the biggest things that I've noticed at the Drexel Kline community, is that, like, yes, like, people are listening to us. Like, yes, we're being heard, right? But who's acting on it? What's actually going, like, what are the next steps, right? It's very easy to rant, but it's very hard to have administrators that are actually listening to those rants and actually acting immediately on those rants. So not only with, like, Dean Bordley, and, like, I remember immediately, like, we got an email from the professor that was like, send us an audio recording because I want to make sure we get your name pronunciations right. But also when it comes to Dean Oates, when it comes to, there are certain student behaviors that should be addressed on a larger scale because there are certain things that are affecting these communities. Even something as small as, I can't hear the professor in the specific classroom, which has nothing to do with, like, diversity. And I know I'm going off on a tangent, but within 2 weeks, they had relocated the entire class. We moved to a different classroom. We were able to hear the professor more often. And that's exactly the same type of attitude that they have when it comes to students in the D&I initiative, and that they show how that they are acting and that they are very quick to respond, but understanding both sides and are careful in their responses and making sure that everything is being addressed in the appropriate manner that needs to be addressed, instead of just sending you an email being like, yeah, we'll get back to it, and then nothing changes for a month. So that's one thing that both Disha and I and the student body are very thankful for, that when we are talking, that we're being heard, that there's somebody listening and that there's somebody acting.
And, not being able to hear a faculty member in a space is related to diversity and inclusion, because there are individuals within our community that have hearing loss or hearing challenges. So we want to make sure that they are able to learn, that they feel a sense of belonging and connection, that they are being heard when these concerns come forward, or that we recognize, those who may not have any hearing challenges, that we recognize, okay, I'm having trouble hearing this faculty member, then I don't want anyone else to have this issue. So let's do something about it to impact change. So it's a holistic approach and, constant reflection on how we can continue to improve. And Um, Oh, okay. So this is another question from Giannis, and it's related to your interest in the law school or how you feel about the law school. Like, what do you or your peers, did you hear from them about what they like most or what they like least about law school? And that can span beyond, the DEI initiatives because all of that matters too when we're considering belonging.
I think my favorite part of our law school is definitely how much of a, I know this is going to sound rehearsed. It's not rehearsed. I promise you, it's not. I love our community. I love it so much. I mean, just from our admin down, we have, our dean of, and this is a side note, he's going to kill me. I'm saying this, but it's fine. Like he is more than willing to go to the barristers and dance with us on the dance floor and just have a fun time. He's more than willing to go into our events that are cocktails for a cause, and he's willing to bartend and connect with students in that manner. He's willing to do whatever it takes to build a community that's positive and accepting of all of us. And he's the dean of students and he's the one that's going to sign our character and fitness form for our bar exam, but he's also not the person is constantly like, let's enforce the rules. Let's do all these things. Like he's very willing to be involved in our community in a way that like he feels like a friend, even though he's the dean and like second highest in command. So like that's just the community that we've built. And I love that community. And I love that I was able to be a part of that in my 3 years here at Drexel. I don't know if I would have changed that at all. The least favorite part of the law school, obviously it's going to be law school's hard. Law school is a lot of work. Law school is again, sounds rehearsed, but that's just, it is. So it takes time, it takes effort. Final exams are not fun, but you get through those like 2 weeks of final exams. And then you're like, okay, I'm done. Now I can like the rest of the semester, you could still have time to yourself and balance that. And I think that, that's probably obviously law school is hard and finding a job is hard and that stuff is what it is. But my favorite part of the law school community definitely is our community.
This is really funny because a part of the reason why I wanted Deeksha to go first is because I wanted to see if she would say something different than I would. And it's literally the same exact response. And it does sound rehearsed because everybody always says community, right? But we actually mean it when we say community. Like, um, I have other friends in other law schools. And time again, I'm reminded I made the right choice. And the community is such a big thing in law school because the one thing about law school is it's going to suck. And that's just because the academics is hard. You're learning a new language. It's like you're learning Russian for the first time. It's just hard to get the grasp of it, right? So again, that is my least favorite thing about law school is just the fact that it's law school. But whenever you're passionate about a career, it'll always be worth it. So I'm telling you now, as a 3L, the hard work is worth it. But going back to the idea of community, right? You don't want to be stressed about schoolwork, and then also be stressed about the friends that you're with. And I'm so happy to say that I've never had to deal with both stressors at the same time because everybody at this community really does care about one another, and we don't have that shark mentality, which is so important. And we also work together as a community to quash any of those little seeds of a shark community starting up. So as 3Ls, we heard that there was someone else who were like a little bit like, I don't know if I should work with other people. And immediately we had a meeting with all of the 1Ls, talk to them about the curve because a lot of people worried about the curve. And Dean Oates, who is one of our like deans, joined us on that meeting and explained to the students alongside the Student Bar Association, the student government leaders to explain that at the end of the day, what's important is the community that you're with. Because the Philly legal community is so small, everybody knows each other. And so when you graduate, it's not like you're never going to see your classmates again. It's not like you're never going to see like the 2Ls before you again, right? So not only does it come from like professional like standpoint, like being friendly with everybody, but also just people just want to be nice here, right? Like school is hard enough as is. Why would we make it harder on ourselves by like being mean to the other people in our community, which I don't understand. And I'm glad I haven't had to experience because everybody has been so nice here and because everybody's been so understanding. Everybody has a different path to when it comes to law school, and so it's not just people who just graduated right out of college. Sorry, like some of your classmates are going to be parents, some of your classmates are going to be older than you, and some of your classmates are going to be younger than you, right? But we've been able to create this community across different. We've been able to be with this community across different like age groups, across different like backgrounds, whether it be like racial or class back, anything of the sort, and we've still been able to find that unity within our community. So that's my biggest thing. If I had to go and pick law school again, the one thing I'd look out for is community, because school is going to be the same wherever you go. The thing that's going to change is the people that you're with.
For that, both you. Bernadette, it looks like you started a question, and I think it might have gotten cut off. So if you don't mind continuing that, we'd love to hear what you have to share or would like to hear from us. I want to ask my admissions partners if there's anything that you've been hearing from current students, excuse me, admitted students or applicants that might be something that we could answer here kind of generally if as it relates to community or belonging or any initiatives. Is there anything that comes up when you're communicating out?
I think overall, you know, I hate to keep reiterating some of the same things, but overall, I feel like the questions that we're getting and then the responses that we're getting from, you know, individuals that are able to engage with our community, that are able to come for a tour or do a virtual info session with one of our law student ambassadors, and also for, you know, for some of the admitted student events that we're hosting is really how they're able to see how the community shines. And, you know, that's something that we absolutely talk about in the, you know, within admissions as well. And sort of coming from the other perspective of it, from a staff member. I will say that that was something that really, that sense of community, the sense of inclusivity that I feel as a staff member and connecting with the students is really strong. And I've been at Drexel for about 1.5 years and had been at a prior law school before, and will really vouch for the fact that it's really something special that we have at Drexel. I feel like you know, both connecting with the other staff members, connecting with the faculty members, and just even seeing the way that the students, you know, treat each other and really, you know, support one another is something really special in academia in general. Like I really feel like we have a really strong commitment to one another, and we all really value that, and it's really apparent.
Thank you for that, Jacqueline. And Jacqueline does a really good job at diet inclusivity. I am gluten-free. And it always feels like sometimes, you know, we don't think about how there might be different needs of community members, but I'm so grateful for friends like Jacqueline who will have a sweet treat available to me. And this also puts her on the spot to remember me always. But it's just, you know, something else to think about. Like, you know, my colleagues care enough to make sure that I'm included in that way, so that when we're celebrating or we're together, I can partake in that celebration too. So I appreciate that. You know, what did you want to share?
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Jacqueline said. Working with our students and especially our law student ambassadors who we work with so closely honestly makes this job more than just a job. I feel really connected to the community. And I feel like me in particular, I left Drexel Kline Law for a different opportunity for a little bit, for about 1 year, and then actually came back. And not many people can say they came back to their previous employer. And I felt so connected to the community, my colleagues, and the students. Honestly, it is really different here, and you feel it. And then I was also going to bring up that we get a lot of questions about being a non-traditional student, which is something I saw in the Q&A as well. So I would love to hear from our students a little bit more about that. But in general, what we say is there isn't the quintessential Kline Law student coming in. We really do value a diverse perspective, and our faculty value that in the classroom as well. Being able to apply life experiences to the classroom is really critical. So if our students want to add a little bit about perhaps a non-traditional perspective or seeing classmates and what they've experienced, that would be helpful.
So I'll start with the non-traditional student question first. We have so many non-traditional students in our law school. I have a lot of my friends took like 8 to 10 years off, even more, before coming to law school, and are older than other law students, but that doesn't feel that way. I mean, all of us are friends, and that's just how it is. And we have a lot of students that didn't come directly from law school or didn't come directly from undergrad. I mean, I took a year off, which isn't as much, but I have students who've taken so many years off and had a whole other career and then chose to go to law school. And it's still the same. Those opinions are just as valued, and our students are just as welcome in our community as any other student would be. So we have a lot of non-traditional students, and if you want to connect with some of them, I definitely have some friends who are non-traditional students, and I would happy to be like send their information over if you want to talk to them more about it. And go ahead if you Sandra, if you want to add anything about
I was
non-traditional.
just gonna say, like, I'm so glad that you brought that up because I honestly completely forgot like the amount of like non-traditional students that we have because I don't see them as like non-traditional. I'm just like, oh, that's like it's like John from class or something like that, right? So you become very blended in with the law school community that it's not seen as like you're like a different standout student. You're just like a student. And so as you were talking, I was like, oh my God, wait, we do have a lot of non-traditional students. I just like take that out because I don't even like think about that. And a lot of students are also like that. Like there are lots of like non-traditional students in study groups. It's very easy to make study groups and make friends when you're on campus. And when now that like everybody's texting, it's very easy to stay in touch with everybody. So those are just like the 2 cents because that makes sense. Yeah.
And also just kind of generally as resources for students, which, encompasses our non-traditional and traditional students. We have what's called Dean Scholars. And Dean Scholars is an upper level student who did well in one of the first year classes, who returns to that class, sits through the class again, and works with the faculty member to hold sessions after the class to kind of break it down from a student perspective, the content and the topic and subject matter of that course. So that allows you to kind of think more openly and broadly about the topic and hear from a different perspective of how to achieve the goals that the faculty member has for that particular course. So that's an option or an opportunity resource for our students. Student organizations, as we talked about before, we don't currently have one specific to non-traditional students, but there are non-traditional students enmeshed in different student orgs. So finding, your connections and the ones that, speak most to you. But one thing when I was in admissions and I was talking to one of our, at the time, current non-traditional students, that they said to me that really kind of stuck with me was that they were super nervous about, being in class with younger students who just came out of undergrad, just because, they didn't feel like they would have much in common. But after time, after like, I think it was like they were in their second semester, they said that, I noticed that we are all starting from the same point. Like none of us have taken a law class before. None of us have had this particular experience. So we're all kind of starting fresh. And that was refreshing to them to know that like they weren't alone in that feeling and that sentiment of being able to, be a little frantic about like where do we go from here, but find those connections in their classmates, no matter what their experiences were prior to coming to law school. So I think there's great opportunity for connection with individuals that you'll find that might be closer in experience to you, and that experience might be that they are also non-traditional, or they also have a similar cultural, or racial background or makeup as you, or there are other things that might allow you to have connection with that individual, other diversity dimensions, other lived experiences. So I find that our non-traditional students do find themselves as being, belonging and connecting, despite not being straight out of undergrad.
First question is the strong community amongst students similar to the alumni student community? And I would say definitely. We definitely try to keep our alumni as involved as I can. We have a lot of events that like alumni come back to and speak at and explain what's happening in their lives and how law school has helped them, or what has changed their perspective from where they're working currently in their careers. So we try definitely to keep our alumni as involved with our community as possible. Especially like we have a pie auction every year where we're trying to donate money to students that are going to do public interest jobs, and that during that auction our alumni are there to help donate money and do various activities and auction off items and to be involved as much as humanly they can be. Obviously we're a small school still, so we don't have a huge alumni connection, but we do most states, at least our career office says at least one in every state where someone, if you're trying to like move out of Philadelphia after law school to find a job somewhere else. Um, then,
One quick thing I'm going to add to the alumni network. One of the great things about the alumni network is that they're still in touch with our career strategies office. So there are lots of alumni who have hired students to their companies and to their firms. And my brother was also an alumni from here. And so he actually hired one of my friends to work with him at his firm too. So we stay in touch, the alumni stay in touch, and they're there to help out. And that's what, and community is still just as strong.
we had a question about how small our school is, as well as how much personal attention we get. Our school is very small. We are about 120, 130 per class, and it's about 400 people total in the law, our students in the law school. So it's very small. Our class sizes, our one-on class sizes will be the biggest class sizes you have, but that's still like the max you have in a classroom is about 70. Usually they're about 40 to 70, but about 70 is the max you can have in a classroom. And our law school, I mean, I know most of our professors by name. And I can go to their office hours. I know most of our students by name. One else I'm less as close to, but like I'm still learning most of their names and I know most of them by name. So it is very small and we get very one-on-one attention. I mean, especially with career strategies, especially when I was going through, you'll learn what OCI is. Don't stress about it right now. When I was going through on campus interviews and trying to find a job, I know I called Dean Gerson, who's our director. I don't remember her title, but our dean of the career strategies office. And I called her all the time. I mean, I was like panicking all the time. And I think that's just very common and they're so used to it. They're okay with it, just calling them and be like, hey, can you call me off the ledge, please, please, please. And she did that to me all the time. So it really is sort of very one-on-one attention, and everyone, I feel like I walk through the law school and mostly everyone knows who I am, which feels like really weird, but also feels like I belong here, and also feels like I have a say in this law school and people know who I am and they want me to succeed. And that's really the big thing for me, is like it feels like the entire staff and the faculty and staff, as well as students, want me to succeed and want me to personally do well. And that really feels empowering for me personally. Same
And everybody, yeah, people don't know Diksha because she's the president. That's like people just know each other because of the strong community that we've built. A lot of our classes, like post year 1L year, can be anywhere from like 10 people to like 30 people. And so it becomes easier to approach the professor after class, becomes easier to connect with the other students in the class. You're like, hey, can I see your outline real quickly? Did you catch this one thing that the professor missed? And so um that's what, like, it is small, but there's strength in our numbers because you just feel more united instead of just feeling like somebody who's lost in the hallway and nobody knows who you are.
Are there bookstore or resources for law class briefs?
I can take this one. So I work at the Legal Research Center, which is like our library. And so I always plug the library whenever I can. I try to plug a lot of things about the school. I've done almost everything you can do in this school. And so there are so many resources that you can get for free. And that is the best part, is that it is for free. Law school is expensive, right? So our Legal Research Center provides a lot of like study resource materials that will be like either like commercial outlines, or it will either be commercial books that will help simplify certain topics for you so that you can understand and have another material to look at besides just whatever the professor teaches you if the professor says something in a way you don't understand. So there are lots of books that are like examples and explanations of torts. You get all of them for free online. Torts in a nutshell, you get all of them for free. Contracts in a nutshell, contracts simplified, multiple choice questions, hypos, all that stuff, all for free through our library.
And then we have a question about what clinic or co-op opportunities do you feel are most inclusive, so connected to student orgs? Again, this is gonna sound like a rehearsed question. I mean, I do a clinic. I currently am doing a clinic and I've been doing it for the full year. And I love our clinic. I'm in the family law clinic, so I get to work and directly represent clients in family court regarding custody and divorce. And I think all of our clinics and co-ops are great, because especially with co-ops are definitely opportunities to get positions after law school if you haven't gotten in terms of getting a job. And a lot of our students get jobs through their co-op that they've done, and they get hired by that co-op. So it really is just we try our best to make sure our people that we're partnering with our co-ops are definitely people who are welcoming students that are diverse, and diversity and inclusion is big in what they do. So I have loved all of our and everything I've heard about the people who have taken the various co-ops, love it. We have a lot of students who work for the United States Attorney's Office in EDPA, the USAO, and love it. And because they get such a good experience of representing clients and being able to take depositions and go to court and all these things that are like available to you as a law student and not have to like graduate and become a lawyer to do.
Co-op is one of the greatest things because I did co-op and I was able to co-op with a federal judge, with not a lot of people can say, and I made such strong connections with that federal judge. And that judge also teaches at the law school too. He'll do like an after, he'll teach the intro to trial advocacy class. And so what's so great about this co-op and clinic experience is they're basically like externships, and you don't have to do the extra paperwork for it. It's part of, before you can graduate, you have to get real world experience. And that has made such a big difference in my own professional development, and as well as the professional development in all of the student boards. Every student has a different path they want to try out. And so because of the co-op and clinic experience, you can try it out without committing a year to your life after graduation. Get a little, dip your toes in the water, feel for it through the co-op and clinic experience.
Thank you both, Deeksha and Sandra, for all that you've shared today. Thank you, Jacqueline and Ina, and Jay, our Dean of Admissions, who is on the call. Thank you for joining us. Thank you all for your time and attention today, and being attentive to the conversation we're having here. And we welcome the ability and opportunity to connect with you further. I've shared my email and LinkedIn profile if you'd like to connect. And it looks like Deeksha and Sandra are plugging in their contact information as well. You also have the admissions contact. And feel free, like I said, to reach out. But thanks again for joining us today. We hope that you have a great remainder of the day and a fantastic weekend.
Thanks
Take care, everyone.
for joining.